is Addie Larue? Why is Addie Larue? What is Addie Larue? Welcome back to my channel, party people. Happy New Year. I'm Jamila. This is JemilaBeReadin, because I do be reading, and this is the first video that I'm filming in 2021. Actually, that's a lie. I did film this video and another one previously, but it turns out that the audio file never saved to my computer. So here we are, take two. Let's get into it. As you can see, there is a change of location. I'm in my car. You know, I just didn't want to go through the hassle of setting up my whole filming space in my room. Everyone is at home right now. It's just loud. I just wanted a spot to myself, and I kind of wanted to, see how this natural lighting would work. If you hear cars or see cars, I'm in a parking lot at the movie theater near my apartment, which RIP movie theaters, am I right? Man. Today, I'm going to be talking about The Invisible Life of Addie Larue, and I didn't like this one, y'all. I can hear the booing. I can hear the popcorn throwing at the screen. I'm sorry. This book just didn't work out for me, unfortunately, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've enjoyed the discussions that I've had with my friends who I buddy read it with. So I thought, why not extend this conversation to y'all? I would love to have some conversation about this book with y'all in the comments down below. So if you like this book, let me know, because I really would like to know what elements worked for y'all. I feel like in a lot of the reviews that I've seen, or like the top books of 2020 where I've been seeing this featured a ton, no one's really been saying what exactly it is that works for them. I mean, not that you necessarily have to, but I'm just curious because I know there's a lot of elements that didn't work for me, so I'd like to know what about this book worked for y'all, and I'd like to have a discussion about that. Quick disclaimer, obviously this is no hate or anything to V.E. Schwab. I follow her on Instagram. She seems cool. I read some of her other books and enjoyed them, so it is what it is. I know this was her passion project, and I'm glad to see that it's receiving tons of great reviews, especially something that she's been working on for 10 years. It just didn't work for me, and I really want to talk about why. So let's just hop into it. So, The Invisible Life of Addie Larue follows our titular character, Addie Larue. She is a small village girl from France, born in the 1600s, and she is feeling trapped in her village. She's very much a free spirit. She really wants to explore the world. She wants to travel. She wants to fall in love, all of that jazz. But she's kind of resigned herself to being in this village, but she just doesn't want to get married. And she wants to be like Esther, who is this older woman in her village who talks about the old gods a lot, never been married, sticks to herself, is kind of considered like the crazy old lady of the village. And Addie kind of wants to be the next Esther, She figures if she's going to be stuck in this village, she'll kind of at least have her own autonomy in that sense. However, when she's 23, she is arranged to be married to a recent widower. And in an act of desperation on her wedding day, she ends up running to the forest and praying to the old gods, the gods that Esther has warned her about. And she encounters this devil-like type of creature. He's not the devil. He's more of like an evil, dark spirit being type of character. And she's praying for her freedom. And what that ends up taking place as is he gives her immortality, but everyone that she meets will forget her. As simple as someone walking out of the room and coming back, they'll forget her. So that's pretty much the basic premise of this story. We're following her life throughout the course of 3 centuries. In the present day, she ends up meeting someone who remembers her, and that's kind of a catalyst for parts of the story, kind of, but for the most part, it's a very character-driven story. There's really not a lot of plot going on. It switches back and forth between the present, which is 2014 in this book, and the past, Addie's life. And there's also a switch of POV in the middle of the story that looks at Henry, the dude who remembers Addie. So at the heart of what really didn't work for me is the story itself. I think that the premise is really interesting. It's a pretty simple premise, but there's so much that you can do with it. And so this was just not a story that I wanted out of this premise, you know? I wanted something a lot more hard-hitting. I wanted something that was really going to dive and tackle themes of humanity, of what it means to be a person, just like really diving deep, especially because we're spanning over 300 years, right? A lot has happened in the world in those 300 years, so I really thought that this was going to be an exploration of not just like Addie, but like the world around her, since so much is happening, so much is changing. I mean, we've had the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, the Civil War, colonization, the transatlantic slave trade. Like, so many big, important things happened that Addie was around for, and we just don't get any of that in this story. I also thought that, I don't know, Addie, she is forgotten, right, by everyone that she meets, but the narrative makes it clear that she does influence history. The book talks about how she is a muse for some artists, how she's planted ideas for some musicians, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, if that's the case, if that's how this is working out for her, then why isn't she doing more for the world? I know that's maybe a lot to ask out of one person, but you have like the ability to do something. Like, you're forgotten, so that means you could spy, you could assassinate Hitler, I don't know. All of these things you could have. I know one person can't do everything, but I just figure that maybe she would try to do something. She spends a lot of her life just wandering around. And yeah, is that it? That's all that she's gonna do with her life? I don't know. That just kind of bothered me. On top of that, this book is very white. It's very Eurocentric. And again, you're around for over 300 years, and you mean to tell me that you've just never traveled to Latin America, you've never traveled to Africa, you've never traveled to Asia, you stayed almost exclusively in Europe and then went to the US. You've only learned European languages. Why? You know? I would think that 300 years, the whole world is at your oyster. That's not the phrase, but the whole world is your oyster. You have so many things that you could do. I don't know. And I mean, the thing is too, I don't want this to be like a white savior story either, but I just thought there would be a little bit more nuance, a little bit more meat to this story. And it really wasn't. I mean, it did tackle themes of loneliness and stuff like that, but very superficially. We never really got deep into any of these themes, and I would have expected something like that out of this kind of story, you know? I've been thinking about how some of my favorite writers would have wrote this story, like N.K. Jemisin or Nnedi Okorafor or even Neil Gaiman. Just I don't want to say it would be more interesting, but it would be more interesting. I think they would have had a very unique perspective or a unique take on this premise, but alas, here we are. Anyway, so at the crux of it, this was not the story for me. This was never going to be a story for me or a story that I would have enjoyed. So that kind of just already sets the tone. Let's move on to some of the technical things. The writing. I know a lot of people love the writing. It is very flowery and very purple prose. Almost to its detriment, I feel like, at least in my opinion. It very much tends to go abstract. It very much feels like a lot of the intention was to put a lot of quotable moments in this book rather than using the writing to craft an atmospheric story that made sense or put intention behind it to move the story forward or do something interesting. It just felt like it was there for the sake of being there rather than with any sort of intention behind it. And look, I don't think I'm a good writer. I clearly don't know anything about writing. So I'm not an authority on this, but that's just the way it felt to me. And because it tended towards the abstract, we never really got to see who Addie or Henry were as people. Like, we never really got to delve into their character. There was a lot of telling and not showing. So I felt like after I read this book, I was sitting here thinking, like, who is Addie? Like, how could I describe Addie besides a white person who's a free spirit who probably would have put wanderlust on her bio if she was born, you know, in the modern day. Yeah, I like couldn't tell you who Addie was as a person. I couldn't really tell you who Henry was as a person. They very much felt like stereotypes of the type of character that they were, and we never got to dive deep. And you would think, especially with Addie, we're with her for 300 years. Why don't I know anything about Addie? Like, why don't I know who she is? I don't get a sense of her personality. I don't get a sense of, like, what makes her tick. She's just there. She's just telling me the story instead of me being immersed with her in her own life, you know? It just felt very abstract, and I never got a good sense of really the characters or really the setting, you know? We go from France, we're in Italy at one moment, we're in the US in another, and I feel like we never got a good sense of the atmosphere. And again, something I would expect out of this type of story would be a very atmospheric setting. We don't get to see how any of these places in their respective time periods felt. So much of it, again, was just telling and not showing, which just was not my vibe. Let's talk about the characters. Addie, first of all, our main character. I've already kind of talked about how I never really got a good sense of who she was. But let me just say this. She is a version of an I'm Not Like Other Girls character. And I've noticed that V.E. Schwab tends to write a lot of her female main characters like this, which is interesting. Addie's definitely not as strongly I'm Not Like Other Girls as, say, maybe Lila Bard from A Darker Shade of Magic. But she does give that kind of stereotypical white girl with brown hair who loves to read, who loves the classics, who loves art, like very typical kinds of art. She's like Belle. She's Belle from Beauty and the Beast, you know? And I can see how a lot of people would resonate with that type of character. I mean, we're all on BookTube, right? Everyone loves to read. Everyone kind of likes this whimsical kind of vibe. But that's all she is. I don't know. Like, give me a little flavor, you know? And Henry, too, like, he's very much typical sad boy hipster. That's pretty much who he is. I was kind of more interested in his POV than Addie's, but not by much. And on top of that, he didn't really have an arc. I mean, neither did Addie, but him in particular, he's coming from like a very, like, he's hit rock bottom kind of. He is going through it. He's suffering from drug and alcohol abuse. He is clearly suffering from mental health issues from forever. That doesn't seem like he's ever gotten like treatment or therapy for. He kind of just shifts that addiction to Addie when he meets her, and then she's gone, and then he's fine. I don't know. Like, what happened? What did he gain from this relationship? But then also, when she was gone, how did we never got to see, there's just like a time skip where he's taken Addie's story and published it without his name. We don't know what he's going to be doing with his life, but he seems content. I don't know if he's gotten therapy. I don't know what he's done to like work through some of his issues. We just get that time skip and he's good. And I'm like, really? We're not going to see an arc for this character who very clearly was going through it, and then we just time skip forward and he's fine? Like, can we get a little more there? A little bit more substance? I don't know. It was just strange to me. And the same with Addie too. She never really goes on this arc. And I hate to hype on the fact that 300 years, like, we've been here with her for 300 years and we never see what she learns or gains out of this experience the losses that she experienced out of this experience, that just really bothers me. I don't know what the takeaway of this story was. And not that any book needs to have a takeaway. Sometimes a book is just a book. It's there to be entertaining. But it feels like this is not that type of book. This book was meant to have a meaning and to be thought-provoking and to explore all of these deeper themes. And yet I find myself wondering, what was I supposed to take away out of this story? But I do want to talk about the mechanics of how her curse works because, look, it doesn't need to be explained, right? That's not the main point. But I think what happened is that V.E. Schwab put a little bit too much information, and then I hooked on to that information, and now I want to know more because things are not adding up for me. You know, I think there's a very fine line when you're doing kind of, I don't want to say magical realism because I don't think that's quite what this story is. But when you have like a very, very low magic system, or you're just using some fantastical element to move the story forward, but that's not the main point. I get not having a lot of explanation or a lot of, you know, world building around the magical concepts because that's not the point. But when you put too much, a little bit too much in there, then that's where it gets rough, right? Because I want to know what's going on. Things are not adding up for me now. And Addie, like, is forgotten by everyone, but then how does she influence people? She can't write anything down at all, but then other people can write her words down. But I guess there's like, I don't know, the mechanics of it is not making a lot of sense to me. How can she influence other people then? I guess there is like that filter of that other person's like interpretation of that, but why is she losing everything? How come she can't keep anything? What does that have to do with being remembered? I get not being able to like have a place to live, but keeping like small trinkets, why do they always go lost? I don't know. There was just a little bit too much information. And now I just want to know how this world works. And also Luke himself, what is he? Once again, I've been given too much information because he mentions that he's older than God. Don't tell me that. Now I want to know, how does he work? How do the mechanics of he makes deals with people and their souls. Why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? I don't understand, like, how come we never got to learn more about Luke? Because he suddenly gets really prominent towards the middle of the story, towards the end of the story. And, okay. Sorry, y'all. The ending. I feel like, okay. I feel like the ending, Addie really thought that she stuck it to Luke. But how does she know he doesn't love her? We don't know anything about him to agree with that assumption of her. She's just telling us that he is incapable of love. But why would I just believe her? Nothing in this narrative has backed that up, you know? And so she's like, well, he's gonna want to get rid of me someday because he's incapable of love. But why do I know that? Besides you just saying that to me. Like, you haven't given me anything else there. Why is he doing anything? Who is Luke? Why is Luke? What is Luke? You know, the same thing. Like, why? There's just like, you've given me too much information and now I need more information because none of this is making any sense to me anymore. Anyway. Yep. Got a little bit heated there. Anyway, those were my thoughts. Those were my thoughts on this book. Yeah, 2.5, 3 stars. Like, it was not by far the worst thing I've ever read. But there was just a lot of things that weren't working out for me. It was just worse, I think, because I went in with higher expectations and because I could see the makings of a really good story for me. And it just fell flat. So that's how I felt about this book. Anyways, let me know down below. Did you like this book? And if so, why? Let's chat about it. I really want to chat about it. So go ahead and comment. Of course, as always, like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Goodreads, all of that jazz. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.